Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Life Unpotted. We are happy to have you here. Whether you are a reoccurring listener, welcome back, or if this is your first time listening to Life Unpotted, welcome. We're happy to have you here, and we hope you stay around. So for today's topic of conversation, get into a little bit of interesting experiences from our anecdotal lives. I will start by saying first and foremost how easy it is to not exist in the present moment. And I've found myself the past 5 to 6 months not being in the present moment, constantly worrying, anxiety being the thief of the present moment, constantly worrying about the next thing, waking up and not enjoying putting my feet on the ground, being in my head, being worried. And I went to a yoga class yesterday, and afterwards I went to pick up some groceries. And as I was in the grocery store, this funny thing happened. There was one person at the checkout line. I had maybe 2 items to check out with. And all of a sudden, everyone in the store gets in the checkout line at the same time. There is a lady with like 16 containers of raw meat in front of me. The guy behind her, still in front of me, starts checking out, and he's checking out for 4 separate different people. So he's paying 4 separate times, and every other person is just lined up. And in my mind, I start to think, what the fuck? Why do I have to wait behind all of these people? I have 2 items and there's all of this nonsense happening. And then I caught myself. Thinking about myself and how I should be ahead of all of these people. Why should I have to wait behind these people? But who am I to have that kind of self-importance? Who am I to think that I should look at these people and say, hurry up? Why is that the case? Why can't I enjoy this probably 5 to 10 minutes I have standing in line? Why is everything a damn rush? Why does everything have to be, how quickly can I get out of the store? Calculating which line should I go in, because which line am I going to get out of faster? Like when we are at the airport and we're going through TSA and we wonder, which line should I go in? Because if that one's 5 seconds faster, then that's going to set me off on a way better track. So this insight, this realization that I had at the grocery store, I was like, this kind of changed the course for the rest of my evening, the rest of my morning this morning, and just how I've been thinking about things. It was a reminder to enjoy whatever experience that I'm in, even if my mind is telling me, you should be checking out right now because you have 2 items. You shouldn't be waiting for people. You shouldn't be having to stand here waiting for people because you have less items. It was really a lesson in showing me that our mind doesn't know what's up. It doesn't by any means. So I have just been enjoying recognizing that the joy is in each and every single moment. And this is really where my mindset is at right now. And this is after months of lack of clarity. And this is how life goes. But I think this is a big realization, a big insight. And it's something that I want to go into a little bit more depth on this call, on this podcast, because I think it's an important lesson to remember to stop and smell the flowers. And it sounds cliche, but really, when you're walking outside, when was the last time you stopped and for like 10 seconds, you just looked up at the sky? You recognize, are there clouds in the sky today? Is it 50% cloudy? You know, in a world where we're always looking at our phones, we're always looking at the internet, we're always checking our emails. It's so important to ground ourselves in this moment and enjoy it for no other reason than the fact that we have it. So on that note, I'll pass it to Sophie, who, by the way, is in New York City visiting friends and family, and I'm in Austin, Texas, holding down the fort. So pass it to Sophie.
Hey, yeah, it's always interesting recording remotely. It's interesting. I'm always like worried about the audio quality, but it's kind of nice at the same time doing it remotely because we are in separate spaces, and being separate allows for separate experiences and separate insights. So I really resonate with the topic that you just brought up, and it's making me think about a meditation I did yesterday on the Calm app. And Calm, if you've done their meditations, they always end with a quote. And the quote that Tamara Levitt read was, "We reach a point in our journey where the beauty of life becomes enough." And this quote, it was very timely for me because the day before then, a few days before I had meditated, I was on a walk. It was a beautiful day in Austin. We had a lot of rain in the past week, so nature's looking green, plants are looking green. And recently I've been walking, or really the past year, I've tried to ground myself more in the moment while walking. So not looking on my phone, not thinking about anything, just really trying to observe what is right in front of me. And I was walking and I saw was setting, and the sunset was casting a shadow on the tree. And you could see the beautiful shadow from the tree hitting the grass. And I just was walking and I just paused and I looked at it and I was like, wow. And actually, I didn't even think much about it. I kind of just experienced it in that moment, what it meant to experience watching this happen. And I felt such a sense of peace and connection and relaxation just observing what was happening right in front of me. And it's interesting to think about. I feel like for so much of my life, that would have been something that I remember growing up and just being like, oh, Mom, I don't want to go to the museum, or, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do any of this stuff that wasn't talking online with my friends or gossiping. I really see how starting from such a young years, like our younger years, our life starts very small because we're so self-absorbed. We're so caught up thinking about other people. We're so caught up thinking about our identity that you do reach a point where I am reaching a point where life's beauty is enough. And on the note of slowing down, yesterday it was a travel day, a brief one though, because traveling from New York to Austin, short flight, 3 hours. The airport in Austin is about 15 minutes from our apartment, which is really great. You know, when you get to New York, you're going to be taking the car or the train for an hour. Not as convenient, but nonetheless, while I was traveling, I did have a lot of some of those thoughts come up, or I really observed the thoughts of, I got to the airport and it was more crowded than usual. And I was kind of in my head like, ugh, why is it crowded? Like, I'm not in New York anymore. Why is the airport so crowded? And I was talking to one of the TSA agent guys, and he was like, yeah, President's Day was this week. There was more conferences than normal. And I noticed throughout my time traveling and going through TSA and being on the plane, I felt much more relaxed than I ever have traveling, honestly. And I was able to observe the thoughts of, okay, I have to get to this event. So as soon as I landed in New York, I went straight to an event. Storytell, New York City. If you live in the city, check this event out. It's a beautiful, beautiful community where people come together and tell stories. The community organizer picks a topic for each week, and this topic was love or lust, and people told so many different types of stories. But anyway, I'm on the plane, I'm calculating when will I get to the event, and I just kind of paused, and I was like, you know what? If I get there on time, or 30 minutes late, or an hour late, will it really impact my life? Will it really impact the grand scheme of things? Or really, not even the grand scheme of things, but will it really impact my ability to actually enjoy the time that I do have there? Why am I, kind of like you're saying, Daisy, with the like, I need to get in the fastest checkout line. I need to make sure I get to the event at the time it starts, and I need to make sure I squeeze in every single second of it. And I think those examples are probably different, but I think they come down to rigidity and trying to force things that are not within our control. Like, we can't help if the airport's busy. We can't help if our flight's delayed. We can't help if we're going to get to the event late. So why are we rushing? And it's not even like, oh, slow down. But it's like, those are moments of your life. Those are moments of your life. And I think we forget. And I had this insight many times on different layers the past few years of recognizing that we almost go through life like forgetting that the moments that we're living are our life. We think that there will be a point in which we reach where we start living. And we forget that the moments where you are stuck in line at the checkout, the grocery store, or you're going through TSA, that is your life. That is the only moment of your life in that moment. So why are we rushing? Where are we trying to get? Because quite frankly, the ultimate endpoint is death. That's where we all will get. we will die. So are we all rushing to get there? It reminds me of the Alan Watts quote I was reading the other day, and he was like, we spend our life frantically running around trying to figure out what the purpose of life is without realizing that the purpose of life was to live. It was here the whole time. So yeah, interesting topic. I think I always find myself back becoming aware of the tendency to rush. And recently, I will say I really have been enjoying life in the moment. But of course, like even traveling here last night, my mind was going crazy. I was thinking of so many different things. I was kind of like, felt like I was disconnected from myself for a little bit. And I think that happens sometimes when we're really immersed in like a lot of activity, but that time span shortens and you find yourself feeling confused when you're going faster because you're used to operating at a more relaxed and slower pace.
You made a great point when you said, as you were getting off the plane and you questioned yourself, will worrying about getting to this on time make a difference? And of course, the answer is no, but it's guaranteed to ruin your experience and take away from your experience in this present moment. Because what is that? It's just worrying. It's concern. And personally, I'm sure many can relate to this. So many of my days, hours, seconds, moments, and yes, I say seconds and minutes and moments because these make up our days, our weeks, our months. So those are just as important. How you are treating every second of your life is just as important as when you look at how you treat your life from a month standpoint, because those moments, those minutes, those seconds are what make up those months, years, and so on. So when we recognize that, when we're able to say, hey, these seconds, they matter, it's almost like we undervalue the seconds of our days, the minutes of our days, and we'll get lost in watching TikTok for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, more maybe. And it's like, you didn't want to do that with your precious time. But oftentimes why we reach for those sort of distractive methods is because we're anxious, we're worried, and that is a distractive method from actually being in this moment. And it's not easy to always be in this moment. It is easier to worry about the future only because that's became habitual. But as we're able to let go of what that should be, exactly like you said, Sophie, that great quote from Tamara Levitt, is that at some point, beauty of life, the beauty of nature, it becomes enough because we're actually here to experience it. And I was journaling this morning when I woke up, and I was reflecting on last night. I looked over a piece of writing that I'm working on because Sophie and I have decided collectively to write more under the branch of Life Unpotted to get our insights, the wisdom we've been learning, and to hone in our voice in a writing style. We're looking to do that. So we've been practicing writing. So back to last night, I was looking over something that I've been writing. And I found myself getting really anxious because I had just read the lovely newsletter that Sophie had sent out earlier that day. And I was like, wow, this is really good. And then I went to read mine and I was looking at it and I was like, I don't flesh things out quite as descriptive as Sophie, and I don't do X, Y, and Z. And I was like, I don't want to look at this right now. So I went and watched Queer Eye. And it's like, what happened there? I got all of this anxiety in my body, all of this fear. So I went and diverted and did something else. And I was reflecting on that this morning. And I was like, at what point did loving the expression and the experience of expression within writing, at what point did that come into an experience of anxiety and attaching this moment and how well I perform in this moment to my outstanding value as a person? And I was like, that can't be the answer. That is not what writing is about. So I was really questioning this morning because, of course, this is not about writing. This act of writing just triggered the experience of anxiety, of worry, of concern. But the great thing to remember is that why would I put the expectation on myself to be an excellent, perfect writer as I'm writing, as I was like, you know what, let's focus on writing for the next year like we have on podcasting for the last year and a half, 2 years. Let's just see where that takes us. It's a means of expression, so let's have fun with it. And working through that helped me work through the anxiety associated with writing. Because yes, I was a person in high school, middle school, having extreme anxiety every time I had to write something. And it led me to believe I was a bad writer. But no, that's just because I couldn't get out of my head as I was writing. And this applies to anything that you do. If you think that you're bad at something, it's because you're thinking. It's not because you're bad at it. If you were able to get out of your head and realize that if you're in the experience, you're not thinking that you're bad at it. You're just having the experience. And let's take this back to life, right? If we're constantly in our head examining, are things good? Are things bad? Are things okay? Are things all right? We're not going to actually be experiencing this second right now, this minute of our life, because we're thinking about it. So it's so easy to get caught in our heads thinking. But there's so much more to this experience than it just being in our mind. So all of that as a long-winded way of saying, we don't have to give the concern that our thoughts put in front of us that much weight. We can be like, oh, right, I recognize that that's the experience I'm having, but I can question that, and I don't have to believe it. I don't have to believe it. So this is a good conversation. I'm enjoying this.
I just stood up. Normally I sit down when podcasting, and there's something special about standing up. I can see the view of Manhattan. I'm overlooking it, and I'm thinking because last night I couldn't sleep. Like, it was one of those nights where my thoughts were racing to the point where I was up probably the whole night thinking about stuff and trying to figure out things and trying to figure out how I felt about a certain situation and trying to figure things out. And I haven't had one of those nights in a while where I straight up couldn't sleep. And there was a point last night where I was like, okay, wait. Okay, here's an interesting thing. So I went to the Storytell event and I had a fruit roll up, which is really funny because I haven't had one of those in like years. And I didn't eat much yesterday. So it was like one of the few things I had. And I also had the flavored seltzer and just kind of like, I feel like I wasn't hydrating as much as normal. And then anyway, I went to that event and I came back to my friend's apartment where I'm staying, and she had like 40 people here because she was hosting an event, and there's a lot of stimulation happening. And I had this memory of kind of all these times where when I would eat a lot of sugar or where I would drink, my thoughts would be so loud. Louder than I could ever control. And not control, but that space between me and my thoughts merely didn't exist. And last night kind of felt like one of those moments where I was laying in bed and I was just thinking to the point where I literally didn't sleep. And it was interesting because last night I felt my body ready to sleep. My breathing was actually, it was almost like my body was sleeping, but my mind wasn't, which was a really, really interesting experience because I'm reflecting on it now. I'm pretty tired today and just kind of like, well, it's been an interesting 24 hours. And that moment really clearly showed that your body can be ready to sleep and your mind can be completely millions of miles away. I think that thought can get addictive, especially when, like, I haven't overthought something in a really long time. And last night I was overthinking something, and it kind of was enjoyable. It kind of was a little fun. It kind of was like, well, this feels good. And it's like, why does it feel good? Why did it feel so good to keep thinking to the point where I literally kept myself from sleeping? It doesn't really make sense. And I think back to there's times like when I was in law school where I couldn't sleep. I was up, I would wake up, I would put my feet at the other end of the bed. Like, I literally could not sleep. And it's the question of, well, it's not that I couldn't sleep. I wasn't sleeping because I was thinking so much. So thought can get so sneaky that you forget that the thought is not reflecting on what's happening in the here and now. And I think for me, it's impatience. I'm impatient and I want to know now. What's the answer? Tell me the answer right now. Instead of letting life progress and finding out. So yeah, that was just an interesting example of like, holy shit, I haven't felt that way in a while. And it was interesting to kind of come back from that. And I'm still kind of in it right now. Like, I don't know what's happening. And yeah, I guess that's okay because certain things I'm like, was it the sleep? Like, I'm like, oh, was it because I had sugar? I'm like, no. I think certain things maybe make your mind chatter louder or make it harder to relax. Ultimately, I don't know. I'm curious what you think about that. Like thinking, oh, is it the sugar or is it not having the full meal that my mind is racing extra loud?
It's not any of that. It's not any of that. It really isn't. Yeah. No, that's your mind telling you that it's that. It just is. You don't have to find out why that it is. It's pretty funny that you're trying to figure out why you were up, thinking a lot, going to sleep. But it's only fitting, though, because it goes in line with the actions you were taking as you were lying in bed and not sleeping. You were thinking. And guess what? You're still thinking. Those wheels are still turning. Are you really here, Sophie? Are you really here right now? I don't think you are. I think that you are in your mind. You're in your head. And, you know, you're on a different planet right now. And that's okay. You can bring back some insight when you come back. But I think it's a matter of accepting where you're at because there is nowhere else to be. It's accepting that there is nowhere else to be because you have the option to step out of your mind, but you're hooked in there. It's sticky. Your feet are having a hard time getting out. But you can get out. You can get out. No matter how many fruit roll-ups you have, no matter how many carbonated drinks you have, you can choose to step out of it. Looks like you want to say something.
Okay, I don't know. It's really interesting because it's like, I think traveling and coming here to New York and then going to that event and processing stuff that like I haven't even talked to Daisy about yet and just things that are like been going through in my mind. And then like being around so many people and getting really excited by stimulation, you see how like living the life that you're kind of miserable is really appealing because, or not even that it's really appealing, but it's kind of really easy to fall back into. Like I think of my life in Austin and it's like, I wake up and I'm so connected to myself and I'm just at ease with life. And the past 24 hours has been an interesting thing. Like as soon as I got into the city, I kind of felt like I was operating at a speed I used to operate at. Like just very, and I was also excited and like I'm not trying to understand it. But really to paint the parallel picture of, Daisy's giving me a look of like, stop trying to figure out. I'm not trying to figure it out. I'm saying to paint the paralleled experience of you don't know what it's like to live a life where you're relaxed until you live a life where you're relaxed. Because your base state, what you're used to, is all that you know. And staying up with racing thoughts at one point in my life was all I knew. Overthinking every single thing that I ever did to the point where I couldn't even go to an event. Like I found myself yesterday like, okay, I found the thoughts of, oh, I'm going to walk into the event. I'm on the plane thinking about how I'm going to walk into the event. Ooh, what's it going to be like? And it's like, I caught myself and I'm like, you have no idea what it's going to be like. Why are you trying so hard to know? Why are you trying so hard to get certainty and settle upon an answer? And I just think that like we can spend our whole lives trying to know and trying to figure out what's happening or what's unfolding or what something means without actually giving ourselves a chance to just find out what it does mean. Because the idea that we have about what we think it means, it's probably never actually what it does mean. And it's almost like for me, as soon as I'm thinking about something through the lens of anxiety, I know I actually probably don't feel about it the way I think I do because I'm viewing it through that lens. I don't know if that makes sense, but as soon as I'm like, I'll have these moments where I'm like, this is interesting. I haven't worried about this thing in a while, but now I'm worrying about it and I'm also feeling really anxious. And I'm also feeling really tired and disconnected from myself. So this really stark difference comes to light of the things I think about when I'm disconnected from myself and the things I think about when I'm connected to myself. And I think sometimes it requires us to go back and forth of we come out of that, we fall back into life, and we kind of have to pause and go, okay, wait, what lens am I viewing the situation from? What lens am I viewing this from? Am I viewing it from fear and anxiety and certainty and control? Or am I viewing it from like what's actually unfolding right now? Because all that's unfolding right now, I see a cab driving down the streets of Manhattan. I see Daisy on the screen. I see my hands here, see the microphone here. And I feel like I kind of have fallen away from that. I was in la la land in the mind. And I kind of felt like I was like 1,000 feet up, honestly.
So I could ask you, what's the problem with being disconnected from yourself? What's the problem with thinking about what it's going to be like to walk into an event that you're excited about? And you could give me a million reasons. I know you could. You could give me endless reasons as to why that's not what you want or that's not the best way to be. But that is only true within the mind because all of this that is existing within reality, the taxi going by, me on the screen, that just is. It's not until you look at it through the lens of your mind and you see that taxi on the street that you're like, oh man, and you start thinking about all this shit that doesn't matter. You start judging it and having preferences and having experiences attached to that you're reliving, maybe on a deep subconscious level. But the experience that you're having, sure, you can recognize that it's different. But why does the difference have to be bad? Why do you have to put yourself into a level of suffering? Because is suffering only happening as you're judging it and as you're thinking about it?
What do you mean?
I mean that you have this idea that what you've been experiencing as you've journeyed to New York in the last 24 hours is that you are looking at it as a bad thing or as something that's caused you stress and that it's something that is bad. But what I'm saying is it's not inherently bad. It's inherently an experience that you're having. And just the same thing as being sick, it's not inherently bad. It's just an experience that you're having. And it only becomes bad when you start to lean into the thought that it is bad. Versus just experiencing life in a way that might feel different because you're sick, but the suffering is only perpetuated when you think about how much it sucks because you're sick. So I'm saying this because experiences are what inform our perspective. And perspective is what allows us to have perspective, and perspective brings happiness, it brings joy, it brings clarity, it brings understanding so that we don't have to always wish for things to be a certain way. We know that we can have our preferences on how we want things to be, but we have to know, like for you, like living in Austin, waking up, doing your walks, feeling connected to yourself, you can know that you're going to spend most of your life that way. But why is it that when you're not in that experience, you start labeling it as bad? Why can't you just label it as an experience that is happening in this moment? And you're alive in this moment. You're living. So you get to experience it from the perspective of what it means to be in this exact moment. You're not dead. So you get to have this experience. So I say this because I question how much of what is happening and what you're experiencing is simply attributed to the story you're telling yourself in your head.
Bingo. Yeah. No, that's entirely it. And it's interesting. I even found myself, like, before coming to New York, like, thinking so much about, I'm going to see this person on Friday. I'm going to see this person on Thursday. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Like, worrying about making sure everything's working out, making sure I see this person. And, like, holy shit, it's so easy to start. You're no longer experiencing it, but you're thinking about it. And all of a sudden, it's like I leave the trip and it's like you never even experience it. You never even allow yourself to be in the trip that you're on, or the experience that you're on, or the vacation you're on, or the dinner you're in, or the walk you're on, or the date you're on, or the whatever it is. We don't allow ourselves to actually be in it because we're trying to understand it. But when you allow yourself to just to be in it without trying to understand it, you enter a whole new route. So that's helpful for me to hear, because as I continue to embark on this journey I'm on with this mind that is trying to figure things out, it's important to remind myself that, hey, just let this be what it is. You can always reflect on it when you leave. You don't have to reflect on it as it's happening, because that's something I used to do all the time, like reflecting on things as they're happening instead of just letting it happen.
I don't know if you've ever been at a surprise party or been the guest that was having the surprise party thrown for, but I have been to a surprise party when I was a kid. And when you surprise a person, they're always like scared, or they're like, what the fuck? But in that moment, I imagine when they're like shocked, they remember that experience because they were here. They were here. They were actually here. Or think of when you're at a concert, like the Taylor Swift concert that we were at. There was this big thing that people were having of amnesia, where they weren't remembering it because they were so present and they weren't thinking. So it's interesting to draw those parallel experiences where we are so in the moment, whether it's from shock or whether it's from sheer joy and excitement, that we get thrusted out of the mind. So it's interesting to draw the parallel of those moments to moments like one that Sophie is exemplifying for us right now, where she is going through New York, and instead of experiencing, the stale smells of New York City, the abrasive sounds, the endless amounts of people walking in the streets, instead of really taking that in, she's thinking. And the reality is that you're going to put yourself into the hell of your mind if you do that. And it's interesting to think about how often we do this. Just how often we get caught up in our mind.
I'd argue probably every minute. Like, most of your life could be that. Most of my life was that. Just thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. Like, I didn't know it was possible to live outside of the mind. And like, holy shit. Like, even going to that event last night where people were just standing up, and I had moments of like, wow, this person just being open and vulnerable and sharing their thoughts and their experiences. It was so refreshing because it felt like people really did a good job of like getting outside their heads and just standing up and telling the story. And I was thinking it was interesting, the age group there. I don't know for a fact, but it seemed like it was probably from like later 20s to early 30s, just reflecting on, I wonder if we spend more time in our head as we're younger, like in our early 20s, like high school. I existed in my head in high school. I don't think I existed in reality in high school. I actually think in high school I only existed in my mind. And last night at the event, this guy was saying he was a Chinese immigrant growing up, and how he felt like he was like the only person of color at his school, and how like he thought that like he couldn't ask out any girl because he was going to get rejected. And it wasn't until like post-COVID in his later 20s where he broke from that and realized that like he didn't have to keep living by that story of that narrative. And that just reflects that like when we're living in our heads, which I think we do a lot in our lives, especially in our younger years and maybe even our older years. Maybe this is just my personal experience that I happen to wake up in my 20s. We do reach a point where like we're able to actually free ourselves to have all these really great experiences without limiting ourselves to what we think is happening. And yeah, I think that's a good thing to take away from this conversation. Like, you don't actually know what things mean. So stop trying to figure it out before it unfolds. And I'm talking to myself. Like, stop trying to figure it out before it unfolds.
I just want to take a pause and recognize that you can come out of your mind at any moment that you desire so to do. And maybe I'm biased at the ease of it because the past 3 days I have been waking up and meditating and being with the moment. Maybe that's why I had the insight at the grocery store. I've also been journaling in the morning, which has been exceptionally helpful for me to help me catch myself with thoughts, to get them out. So you don't need to do these things, but I'm seeing how helpful it is for me to like create the space to do so and to catch myself in moments where I just want to create the stories in my head that I should be getting to go ahead of this person who has 50 pounds of steak in their grocery cart separately packaged, you know? But it's like, that is the reminder that the life is not about just us. And I think that that is exciting because imagine how boring life would be if it was just about us. Imagine you were in your head walking the streets of New York City thinking X amount of things of, oh, worried about this, worried about that. And any person you walked up to, they would reaffirm the thoughts in your head and be like, yeah, we know what you're thinking and that's true. That's awful. It's worry. It's consumed. Da, da, da. But the great news is that that's not the case because it's not all about you. No one has the thoughts that you have because no one has your mind. We all just share this collective reality, but we all experience it differently as long as we are in our minds. And we can always come out of them. We can always choose to realize that we don't have to view this reality through just our mind and just based off what we can gain from this experience. And I think that that can be a refreshing way to get out of your head, to think, like at the grocery store, this guy in front of me, I'm like, why the hell is he taking X amount of minutes to check out separately? And I was like, you know what? What if he's buying groceries for someone? What if he's delivering groceries to someone who's elderly who can't go to the store? What if it's for someone who's sick? What if what he's doing right now matters a hell of a lot more than me getting out of this grocery store 5 minutes sooner so I can do what? Go home and watch TikTok? It's refreshing to recognize that everything is happening at all moments of the time for you, but it's not always about you. This moment isn't about you. Maybe the moment that is to come in 5 weeks, 5 minutes is about you, but I find it very refreshing to realize that in this moment, I don't have to see the benefit of this moment to be about me. It doesn't have to be about me. And I think that that can help me get out of my head. Because if I can see that this guy is maybe buying groceries for someone who's at home and can't get out, wow, they're going to have a nutritious meal because of this guy. And in a way, I'm connected to that because it's humbled me to stand here and wait in line for 10 minutes longer than I'd wanted. And it reminded me that it's not all about me. It's not all about me. So I think that it's just a great reminder to, when you're feeling frustrated because something's happening, someone's pulled out in front of you, there's an accident, so there's major traffic, to remember what else could be possibly happening since I'm having to wait. What could positively be contributing to this by me waiting? And instead of resisting that, to say, right, I'm back here in the moment. And even though I'm not getting my way, I can enjoy the moment because it's not always about me.
Yeah, for sure. I think that really painted perspective for me to take with me for the rest of the day of just making sure I'm here, making sure I'm actually here, experiencing what's happening without thinking so much about it, and not needing to put so much pressure for things to unfold a certain way, because when we do that, we interfere with experiencing the beauty of life and actually allowing ourselves to experience life without interfering it. So I appreciate this conversation. It has certainly helped to ground me back into the moment, a place where I probably didn't even know that I wasn't in, because a lot of the times we don't know when we're in our minds until we do, which is the funny part. So thank you, my co-host Daisy, for helping me do that through reminding me that I don't have to think about everything. And I need that genuinely. Thank you, Dave.
We all need the reminder. I know I need it sometimes. We all need it sometimes. So no shame in it. You're welcome. And thank you all for being here. Thanks for being a part of the conversation. And we will see you next week. I hope you have a lovely weekend and have a great evening.